The left side of his face gradually became paralyzed, making it look oddly frozen in time.
The left side of Bugorsky's face gradually became paralyzed, making it look oddly frozen in time.
In the 1970s, Russian scientist Anatoly Bugorsky was a researcher at the Institute for High Energy Physics, working with the Soviet particle accelerator known as the synchrotron U-70.
Anatoly Bugorsky was a Russian scientist and researcher at the Institute for High Energy Physics in the 1970s. He worked with the largest Soviet particle accelerator, the U-70 synchrotron.
On July 13, 1978, he placed his head into the synchrotron to check on a malfunctioning piece of equipment, when all of a sudden he was hit.
July 13, 1978, Bugorsky popped his head into the synchrotron to check on a malfunctioning piece of equipment when all of a sudden, zap!
A safety mechanism went wrong at exactly the wrong moment, shooting a proton beam straight through his head. Although he felt no pain, Bugorsky reportedly saw a flash brighter than 1,000 suns. The beam entered through the back of his head and exited through his nose. Soon after, the left side of his face swelled up like a balloon, and he was rushed to the hospital to be treated.
Safety mechanism failed at exactly the wrong moment, shooting a proton beam straight through his head. Bugorsky said he saw a flash of light that was brighter than 1,000 suns. And though he felt no pain, the left side of his face swelled up like a melon and he was rushed to the hospital. The beam had entered through the back of Bugorsky's head and exited through his nose.
Interestingly, not only was he treated but also studied, as nothing like this had ever happened before. People believed he'd be dead within a few days. It makes sense that doctors expected the worst.
The hospital had never treated such an accident, so this was their first chance to study the effects of being beamed by the accelerator. Most people believed Bugorsky would be dead within a few days. But could something more sinister happen to him, like in one of those futuristic sci-fi movies? Of course doctors expected the worst, and why wouldn't they?
The kind of energy a skull absorbs from the proton's beam ionizing radiation is measured in grey. As Gizmodo explains, the beam that struck Bugorsky measured 2,000 grey when it entered his skull, and about 3,000 grey when it exited. For reference, absorbing more than 5 greys at any time generally means death within 14 days.
The kind of energy Bugorsky's skull absorbed from the proton beam's ionizing radiation was unlike anything anyone had seen before. This type of ionizing radiation is measured as what's called gray energy. According to Gizmodo magazine, absorption of over 5 gray at any time usually leads to death within 14 days. The beam that entered Bugorsky's skull measured around 2,000 gray and about 3,000 gray when it exited on the other side. So he really should have dropped to the floor dead as a doornail as soon as the accident happened.
Because no one has ever experienced radiation in the form of a proton beam moving at the speed of light.
Though the beam was hugely powerful, no one before had ever experienced radiation moving at almost the speed of light.
All bets were off. Incredibly, Bugorsky survived longer than just a few days. In fact, he is alive and pretty well in 2018. However, the incident didn't leave him entirely unscathed. The beam burned a path through his skull and brain tissue, and for the next couple of days after the event, the spots on his head where the beam entered and exited experienced some skin peeling. Bugorsky lost the hearing in his left ear, and now experiences constant tinnitus.
For the first couple of days after the event, there were spots on his head where the beam entered and exited, and he experienced some skin peeling. He also lost the hearing in his left ear.
The left side of his face gradually became paralyzed, making it look oddly frozen in time.
The left side of Bugorsky's face gradually became paralyzed, making it look oddly frozen in time.
The left side of his face gradually became paralyzed, making it look oddly frozen in time.
The left side of Bugorsky's face gradually became paralyzed, making it look oddly frozen in time.